Hey guys, this is John, and I'm playing Swap in the 5-minute pool on ICC. This is a German player, 2255 rated. Looks like we're going to have a Queen's Gambit decline. Nope, Tarrasch. Okay. I don't mind playing against this opening, although I think this opening is a lot better than its reputation. In some of the main lines, White has been having a lot of trouble cracking Black's defenses, so let's take here. And I think I'm going to play Knight A4 directly, and after the bishop moves, then play Bishop E3. And play to control the c5 square. Or if bishop d6, if I can play bishop g5 favorably. Just because of the pressure on d5. Now I'm just going to stick with bishop e3. And probably continue with rook c1 to follow. Yeah, let's just go here. I suppose they could sack the exchange on e3. That would be rather interesting, although probably unsound right now. Hey, if they're going to do it, we're going to find out whether this idea is worthwhile. So they're attacking e3. I can play queen d3 and defend. Probably I should. Queen d3, knight b4, queen b3. That's okay. Let's do that. Yeah, because getting rid of the dark square bishop is positionally desirable for black, so I'm not completely shocked that they made this exchange sack. It crossed my mind that maybe bishop c5 would have been better than rook c1 to disallow this possibility, but now we'll have an unbalance, and it will be intriguing to see which will win out, my extra exchange or the positional compensation that black has. All right, and they're playing directly for this e3 pawn. Yeah, it's hard to defend. I mean, rook c3 defends for now, but my rook is on a bad square if I put it there. If queen takes d5, they just have knight takes e3, so I'm thinking knight d4 is the way to go right now. I may have to forfeit my light square bishop if I do that. Could also play knight back to c3, and then maybe knight takes d5. That might be the best way, actually. Knight c3, queen takes e3, queen takes, knight takes. Move the rook. It's between that and knight d4. Knight c3, queen takes, knight takes. Let's say rook e1. Hard to say. I'm going to go with that line, actually. He has knight b4 as well, though. Nah, let's do this. I think the knight is bad on the rim anyways, so if I can get it back into play and simultaneously create a threat on d5, I'm going to go for it. If knight b4, I was thinking knight takes d5 anyways. With the possible line, knight takes d5, queen takes d5, queen takes e3 check, although he also has knight takes e3. So knight b4 might be decent. I guess on knight b4, I can always play just queen d2. Yeah, let's do that. He can play knight takes e3, this is true, but after, say, rook e1, probably they'll take the bishop on g2 eventually. Probably want to avoid rook f2 here, just because that places it on the same diagonal as the dark square bishop. Yeah, let's play like this. I'd like to kick this knight out, I think, with a3, if I can. The knight is not stable on this square anyways. So if I can force it to move and win d5, things are starting to look up for me. If you play the Tarrasch Defense, this is a thematic exchange sacrifice you want to take note of, this rook takes e3 idea. There's a really good book written on this opening by Jacob Agard and Natirlis by Quality Chess a few years ago. I played around briefly with the idea of studying this opening myself, but I never quite pulled the trigger on it. I think the problem with this line is there are a lot of ways White can just deaden the play, and Black has an acceptable position, but one with an isolated pawn where there's really not a whole lot of active possibilities. Okay, this is a move I thought they might try, because that threatens discoveries with the knight. Now, king h1 is obvious, but king h1, there's knight g4, isn't there? Maybe then h3, knight f2 check. Knight g4 would also threaten bishop e3 ideas. It's kind of nasty. Maybe I have to play knight d4 here? That also doesn't look good. I think I got to come here. And after knight g4, hope for the best. Maybe pawn e3 and try to confuse the issue. Yeah, actually, knight g4, e3, and black will be in a pin down the e-file if they take that e3 pawn. So it's hard to say what's going on in that resulting position. Like, say, knight g4, e3, bishop takes e3, h3. And if they take my queen, I take here. Okay, so they're just going to do this and then probably take on, play bishop e3, I assume. Yeah, that's a practical way to do this. So knight takes d5. Knight takes d5, knight takes, queen takes, bishop takes c1. It's not good for me. I don't believe. What alternatives do I really have, though? You know what I might have to do here is take, and then after take, just take on c8. And then play queen takes d5. And at least it's equal material there. Black's better, no question about it. But at least
Check.
I don't lose the e-pawn, which would have happened if I had played queen takes d5. I'll show that line in the analysis. All right, so we'll do this. Yeah, I think I'm worse because my pawn structure is worse. This bishop on e3 looks restrictive. Maybe it's not a huge disadvantage. It's a position I can play. Go queen back here, just stopping rook c2. Maybe rook d1 next if I get a chance. Okay, let's play e4. Possibly putting the rook on e2 is a good idea in the future. Maybe I can play e5, e6, and try to offload my e-pawn for black's f-pawn. Got to make up some of this clock deficit, too. Queen f2 is a threat with that move. Therefore, let's just go here. My knight controls g1. Still e5, e6 is what I have on the agenda. Rook d1. I'm not afraid. Let's go. Or rook d8, rather. Rook d1 is not a threat. My queen covers that square. So what are you going to do about e6 now? And I can try to open the black king. It's not completely one-way traffic. Yeah, so they decide to go for a trade. That's probably smart. I can't really decline that trade. He offers a draw, but let's play this out. There's nothing to be learned from just agreeing a quick draw right here. There's plenty of play in the position. I mean, black should be doing fine because they have a bishop versus the knight with pawns on both sides of the board. But now that black's king is a little exposed, like I'm seeing my knight possibly jumping to one of these squares. It could be something to work with. Maybe rook c2 or h4. h4 idea. Knight g5. Yeah, so he plays h6 to put a stop to that. Okay, let's come here and see if we can get in rook f4 check. Maybe bother that black king a little bit.
Check.
I don't know, though. King here. All right, I'm going to come back here. I don't really see any benefit to what I just did.
Check.
I thought for a second about knight e5, but it wasn't going to work out too well. Maybe I can centralize my king before they can. Let's just get this pawn off a dark square for now. Threaten knight d6, among other things. Maybe I can push my queenside pawns a bit. Problem is I'm kind of tied down to the defense of this pawn, aren't I? Let's keep pushing. b5 is going to probably even this thing right up. I'll offer him a draw.
Time work. Check.
Yeah, nothing much to play for there. All right, so we defended maybe a slightly worse position after the exchanges. So, like this position right here, I think is a tad better for black. Like, very slim, but appreciable. Maybe a quarter pawn or something. Let's just see what the engine has to say. Engine thinks it's even more than I said. Okay, let's go back and have a look. I think in retrospect, it would have been better to disallow the possibility of rook takes e3. Because that exchange sack kills one of my really good pieces, the dark square bishop, and saddles me with these long-term weaknesses, the double D pawns. So this is all Tarrasch theory. Takes c5. I often play a3 here, but knight a4 is another line. The main line is bishop g5, so white putting the bishop all the way out here. But we get this trade, and then knight a4, bishop d6. I thought I had remembered that bishop e7 is played more often, but bishop d6 has value too. The bishop's more centralized. Well, not necessarily more centralized, but it's perhaps a little more active on d6 than it is on e7. If there's a drawback to bishop d6, it's that it allows bishop g5 with a pin, so I do wonder what the engine has to say about that. Bishop e6 or h6. Yeah, bishop e6 looks normal, just defending this pawn again. Rook c1, and white's idea with this whole knight a4 plan is to eventually sink the knight into c5, so that's what I'm looking to do. So I played bishop e3, rook e8. You know, maybe I should go for this move. Take. Is queen e7 a problem, though? Attacking this and also e2? The engine doesn't seem to think so. Rook c1, and if take, queen b3, and white can gambit a pawn. Maybe white has ideas of rook e1. Well, let's see what it thinks about the exchange sack. Rook takes e3. It's possible this is all theory, and I'm just unaware of it. I don't play this line too often. I've never played this line OTB for white, but it could be theory. Like, I wouldn't be shocked if there were games played from this position. So the engine says start with knight g4, but I bet it's pretty similar. So here, and now I try to defend the e-pawn temporarily with king h1. Maybe this is an improvement. So if queen takes e3, queen d2, just offer a queen trade. What about knight g4 after king to h1? Here I can play this knight c3 move again and try to go knight takes d5. And what if here? Queen takes d5. So I'm on the bishop. So that if knight f2 check, we can take, and then take on d6 at the end of the line, and white's up a piece. Makes sense. Probably I need something better than what happened, though, because it looked like I was just defending from this point forward for the next several moves. Knight c3, rook c3 is potentially better defending this way, but black is doing well. The engine likes black's position, and black can even afford to play a slower move like bishop d7, taking aim at this knight on a4 and also allowing for rook e8, and black is well coordinated. So yeah, all in all, I think this is a good exchange sacrifice for black. Rook takes e3. So knight c3 was played. He went here. And now takes. So bishop c5 is even more annoying. So threatening bishop takes e3. And then my best would be knight d4, knight takes e3, and king h1. So I have to get creative. And there's no question about black being down material anymore, since they can regain the exchange if they want. Knight takes f1, take here. Yeah, and I'm worse, just down a pawn right now. d5 is weak, and maybe I have some activity with knight f5, but the engine evaluation doesn't lie. Black's doing well. So he took here, and then I played rook e1, but maybe I was asking for some punishment. Knight takes g2, looks like they played it well. I was thinking more along the lines of just knight g4. I thought this is what black would go for because it has the dual threats of bishop e3 and knight f2, but it appears that knight d4 does defend, blocking the bishop. And if I can play pawn e3, I'll stabilize things, and it won't be so bad. But Swap played it correctly. Knight takes g2, king takes g2, bishop e3, just went for regaining the exchange. Wow, bishop h3 check is possible here. Safe to say, neither of us saw that move. If you want to, you can pause your video and try to figure out what is the purpose of bishop h3 check. Why in the world would black play that move? Okay, so the idea of bishop h3 check is that if white takes the bishop, black has time to move their attacked queen and play queen e6 or d7 check. And in doing so, black gets out of the attack by the white knight. So let's say I retreat. Now they just take my queen, and I'm down too much material here. Black is completely winning. So that's a nice in-between move. Little Zwischenzug, bishop h3.
Check.
So apparently on that move, I would have to move my king back. King h1 is forced. And then black has gained a tempo compared to the game. So they could play knight takes d5. Because remember, if ever they take my queen, I'm taking their queen with check and then taking d2 next move. So knight takes d5. Or sorry, this is the game continuation. Check here, knight takes d5. And now the difference is there's no rook takes c8 I can throw in. I would simply have to play queen takes d5. And then after take and take, I assume they can just take on e2 now. And threaten mate. Knight g5. Okay, knight g5 could present some problem on the bishop and also on f7. And I defend g2. Bishop e6. Queen takes b7. And white has nearly equalized. Okay. Well, it's still complicated, I suppose. Rook d8 is even better, trying to back the queen off. Yeah, and here black's advantage is larger compared to the game. Yeah, because bishop h3 is a move that black achieved for free in this case. Cool resource. Yeah, and I mean, I think it's normal that this move goes unnoticed. That would be a pretty tough move to find for a blitz game, but kind of a beautiful resource. If white takes the bishop, they lose. So my opponent just did this, and then I took on c8, because if I play queen takes d5, the issue is that they can take c1 and then take on e2 with check at the end. And they're going to be up a clear pawn. I don't have time to play queen d8, checkmate.
Check.
So I did this first, and yeah, undoubtedly white is worse with the structure, and also probably the bishop versus the knight with pawns on both sides of the board confers some advantage to black in and of itself. The bishop has a better chance to be able to switch sides of the board and create threats on the king side and queen side compared to a knight, which usually can only operate in one sector at a time. I think I defended reasonably after this. They probably underestimated the idea of just e5, e6, allowing me to offload my pawn and expose their king. Yeah, and I think he offered a draw right around here, but I wanted to play a little bit more just to see because, yeah, I mean, white, in a tournament game, I wouldn't have much of a reason to decline a draw if there was plenty of time on both of our clocks. But here, there's a little bit of play left. There's 4 pawns each and an imbalance, the bishop versus the knight.
Check.
Yeah, here I should probably just trade, because after checking king g7, I realized that rook c2 was a pretty substantial threat, and I can't really do anything active. Maybe I could play knight d4, trying to go knight e6 and also cover here, but yeah, rook e5, they attack the knight. I'm not going anywhere out of this. I'm still slightly worse. So I just played rook d4 and we swapped, and I don't think there were any opportunities for either side after this. We just traded all of the queenside pawns. I mean, if black had more time, maybe they would have been more ambitious and tried to win, because my king is tied down to the defensive g3, so if the queenside pawns don't all get traded, like maybe there's a chance that black could win this position. I could try to play for the flag here, but I mean, black played a good game, and that would be a shame if I won via a flag in this totally drawn position. So anyways, hope you guys enjoyed this game. Some cool Tarrasch themes, especially this exchange sacrifice on e3. I'll have to look this line up, because I think if this line is going to be playable for white, then there must be some other move. Maybe some other move right here, like maybe bishop e3 is not best. And also maybe something with bishop c5, although according to what I was seeing with the engine, even that doesn't bring white an advantage. All right, well, thank you guys for watching, and I'll be back again soon with another video. Bye, guys.